So you'll hear me talking about it a lot in the coming year. I also think it's one of the easiest ways that we can really start to get a handle on the recovery that students need, and it fits right into our existing assessment system and our existing curriculum, and so many just great benefits. So this is kind of like SBAC Interim 101, I should say up front. So if you are a super pro at SBAC Interims, you will probably get a couple tips and tricks out of this presentation, but it's not going to blow your mind. But if you are relatively new to interims, you've played around with them a little bit, maybe administered one, you've never administered one at all, this is kind of or you're looking for more resources to dig a little deeper into the content, this will be a good fit for you. So what are they? So we give the SBAC summative at the end of the year. That's the big picture, high stakes assessment that we are held accountable for in a variety of ways. But there are other kinds of tools available from SBAC. So there's this thing called an interim comprehensive assessment, which is basically like a practice test for SBAC. I don't recommend that at all. I don't think we ever need a practice test for SBAC. Third graders, they have their own training test, and that's appropriate just to get them familiar with the software program the first time they do it. But after that, we don't need to be practicing for an assessment. But what we can use, and what I think are awesome, are these interim assessments. So there are two kinds now, and this has changed a lot over the last few years. So always new things coming out here. But there are these interim assessment blocks, IABs, and there are these focused interim assessment blocks. I highly recommend both of those tools for classroom use. And also within the comprehensive assessment, there's a performance task piece. And that I also recommend. It is a fabulous tool. And that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of students being able to integrate and apply what they know and communicate that to other people. So it's a really rigorous kind of performance task that our students tend to do fairly poorly on in SBAC because it doesn't match how they're asked to convey information in a classroom setting in a lot of cases. I'm going to pop open this link to the interim overview. Please feel free, as we're going through this presentation, click the links and play with them while I'm talking, because the whole point of this really is to get you familiar with tools and resources that are available through the SBAC site. So don't hesitate, just go ahead and click. But that link to the interim assessment overview, this really tells you kind of how interims can fit in. So we have, purposes of interims, types of interims, features of interims. But what I want to scroll down to is, and I'm sorry for scrolling, I know visually that's crazy. I hope you're on your own screen. There's this really nice chart on page 4, and it kind of lays out interim comprehensive assessments, the ICAs, interim assessment blocks, and focused interim assessment blocks. And it talks about what they measure, the format of the test, kinds of test items, how results are reported, and what resources are available for each of those. So again, we're looking at those right-hand 2 columns, mostly the interim assessment blocks and the focused IEBs. They assess anywhere from, the focused ones assess 1 to 3 targets, and the blocks assess 3 to 8. So it's a pretty small window of content that they're looking at, which really lets you target it and tailor it to where it fits in with your curriculum. So for example, if you teach a unit on fractions, you're going to go through that with your students. You're going to give them your classroom-based assessment, and then you could give them the IAB on fractions and have them focus on that same content. So you get to see, here's my classroom assessment and how the students did. And then here's an SBAC-based assessment and how the students did. And right then, as you're teaching it, you get to compare those two, and you get to look at, what is showing up in your assessment versus what is showing up on the SBAC piece. So just all the literacy ones, ELA is up front. And you'll see on the focused IABs, these didn't even exist a few years ago. And then this year they released, last year they released 20. This year they released another 30 or so. So every year there are more focused assessments and targeted assessments, but it gets down pretty specifically. If you see in here, it's like one claim, one target, and you can really try and focus in on that standard and align it when you're teaching to particular text. So all of the interims that are available are listed in that document, and I just want to make sure that you're familiar with it and have it as a handy resource for yourself. And oh, there we go. All right, so some details. I went over some of these already. One of the things I didn't talk about was this Tools for Teachers site for SBAC, and that is really just an amazing resource if you haven't played on it. This is where SBAC has had teachers from across the country start working to align resources and tools for teachers related to the Smarter Balanced assessments. So there are just, again, so many resources. And over here on your nav bar on the left-hand side, you can see all these pieces, but these connections, interim connections playlists, these are literally links of resources, lesson plans, and materials that teachers have already gone through and put together. I'll do geometry, I guess, so that you don't have to do that. So when you give an interim and you get your student data back, it automatically gives you this playlist, which gives you these resources. And it really tells you what, it's like a lesson plan format or a unit plan format, and it gives you tools and resources for teaching or for intervention right away, which is a really cool thing to have automatically linked into your student data and what it looks like. So let me pull this back up again.
Lisa, I just want to add too that the coaches actually have a module on the Tools for Teachers for SBAC, and that's what it's called. So if you go to where the modules are, you could dive deeper into that later today or tomorrow if you wanted to.
There's lots. And again, it's all about saving teachers time, right? So you give these SBAC interims and then it links you right to resources. So you're not trying to find things on the internet, creating your own materials, going through, binders and curriculum books in your classroom. Quick and easy link that's been vetted by teachers. And these are peer-reviewed resources. So panels of teachers from all over the country have vetted them and given feedback on them to try and make them pretty high quality before they go on there. Okay, I'm going to move forward. So why do we use these? They're already aligned, easy to incorporate. You could give an SBAC interim as a pre-assessment and a post-assessment on a unit of study. They're quick. I know one teacher that I worked with, she would give her classroom tests or unit assessment, and then she would have the kids go grab their Chromebook and do the SBAC interim that was related to that unit of study that they just did. And she would look at the data from both next to each other. Lots of feedback on the rigor of our curriculum and instruction. SBAC is designed on WEB's levels of knowledge, and there's a lot of resources in the SBAC portal about that. So really looking at the rigor of the questions that we're asking students on summative assessments versus the level of rigor that they're asked to meet on SBAC assessments. There's also an interim assessment portal. It's linked here on this slide. You have to log in if you haven't created a Tools for Teachers account yet. So I'm not going to click on it myself right now, but it's a super easy to set up a login, couple minutes, worth having it. And then you can go into this interim assessment item portal, and you can literally see the item level responses from students. You can see the full text of questions, all the answer choices. You can also see that within Airways, Tide Airways, on our Vermont state system, so you can get into the data. But that's one thing we don't get to do with SBAC. We don't get to see the questions, and that makes it really hard to do a detailed item analysis and figure out why students were struggling with that particular question, that particular target. But on the interims, you can. You have full access to the questions, and all the questions are formatted exactly the same way that they're formatted on the SBAC summative. So it might not be the exact same question, but it'll have the same format, the same kind of wording, the same vocabulary in this question, the same question structure. And we spent some time looking at those at Wells and really, again, looking at the rigor of those questions and where we were versus where SBAC was asking students to be. And as a result, we did a lot of things like revising our own unit assessments and trying to incorporate, more rigorous, more complex questions into our own assessments. You can also use these like any way that you want to. So you can print them out. You could use them for do nows. You could use them for exit tickets. You can take that question format and change the content in a multi-day way so that you get students more familiar with the questions. Again, not just practicing for SBAC, because nobody ever wants to do that, but thinking more complexly, thinking more problem solving, more analyzing the question, more higher order thinking skills that are involved, multi-step questions, integration of multiple areas of thinking. It's just fabulous practice for them to do those kind of things. So these questions are available. You can use them anytime. Jamie says she's confused about the difference between focus interims and interim assessment blocks. So interim assessment blocks, they hit like 4 to 8 targets. So when I say like standards, Common Core standards, claim, target, so they hit like 4 to 8 targets. Interim assessment blocks hit 1 to 3. So it's a smaller slice. It's a much more focused chunk of curriculum that you're assessing. The interim assessment blocks are also focused, but a little bit more broadly. So it gives you more depth of information about students on a variety of claims, as opposed to a quick slice that gives you really fast kind of formative data to help you with instruction. Does that answer your question, Jamie? Yeah, okay. Move on. All right, so who are these available for? All students who are going to take the SBAC can access these because they need their login to SBAC to be able to do it. You don't, though. You can pull interims and print them off and administer them to your class. So if you're a high school teacher and your students don't have an SBAC login, you can still use this material. You just have to prepare it for them either as a PDF or a printed copy for them to take. But any student with an SBAC login can get into the system and can take an interim assessment. These are not designed for students taking alternative assessments, which we have, a handful of in our district. So any student who does not participate in SBAC should not participate in these. And just like SBAC, you can enter all their modifications and accommodations at the beginning of the year for students who are on IEPs, 504s, or EST plans and have accommodations. Follow the manual guidelines around that process. And if you should set them up at the beginning of the year, again, so the students, if they are participating in interims, they get familiar with those modifications and accommodations and they can use them very smoothly when they get to the end of the year summative and are ready for assessment. This is one of the coolest things that I think people don't understand about SBAC testing, interims, and summatives in general. There are blueprints available for all the tests. They call them blueprints, but basically what that is it tells you exactly what's on the test. It tells you exactly what standards are being assessed. It tells you what level of knowledge students need to have for each of those standards. And those are available for both the summatives and for the interims. So up to the top of this page, you've got the summative blueprints, and they're over on the right-hand side, ELA, math, testing times. This is the comprehensive test for performance tasks, all that. But then if you scroll down a little more, here's the interim assessments. So if you're trying to figure out which interim assessment is going to be the most appropriate for your class based on the curriculum that you're teaching, you can dive into these blueprints and you can really look at what's a good match. So that's an ICA. I don't want to do that. Focused IAP, IABs, because those are just, again, the coolest. So if you go into those documents, it'll literally walk you through, like, here's what the blueprint is. And then it breaks down that interim assessment block, the focused one. You can see how many questions there are. You can see for each of the blocks what that would look like for students. And then it gives you the different grade levels and the blocks available for them and what it looks like. And then if you get down to the bottom, page 6, I'm in of this document, but you can see grade 3, claim 2, write and revise narratives. It literally breaks out exactly the standard of what the student needs to do, explains it very clearly. It tells you the depth of knowledge level, which in this case is level 3, and it tells you that it's a short answer format. Same with revising brief texts and language and vocabulary use. So, and machine scored just means how many of the questions are machine scored or automatically scored. So short answer versus multiple choice, basically, is what that's saying. So you can, again, you can go right in and you can look at what is available there. If you look at the summative pieces, that really gives you exactly what's going to be on SBAC at the end of the year. So no surprises, like this is what we're assessing. And one of my goals for our coming year is when we really dive back deep again into proficiencies and into the work of aligning those SU-wide, that we will be able to spend some time looking at those blueprints to help us focus on core proficiencies and where we need to be aligning our curriculum a little bit more strategically. There's just some information on how to administer SBAC interims. Again, you go into the SBAC portal. There's a link for how to activate that test session. Don't forget you have to do that test admin certification every year, just like for SBAC summative. So that little 30-minute online walkthrough, when you come back in August, it'll make you automatically do that again. How do you access the data? So the assessment viewing application, so that Airways link within the TIDE system walks you through all the data. I could do a whole nother presentation on reporting and data, which I think would be great in the fall after we have some data. So I'm not going to go too deeply into those resources, but I want to let you know that if you administered interims this year, or if you had teachers in your buildings who did, go into these reporting system quick guide and the reporting system user guide. The user guide is really detailed. The quick guide is like a quick and dirty version of how to get in and look at your scores. But it really tells you, again, very deep information about students, and you can break it all the way down to the individual student and the individual item. You can look at it at the class view. You can look at it by the standard view. There's a lot of ways that you can navigate within that system to look at the information that you're trying to access. Can I let Jamie Rosas join? I don't know why Jamie can't join.
I'm checking with Corey because she set these up. I'm checking with her to see if she
if they're on a home email instead of a school email. Yeah, if they try and log in, check their piece, it should work automatically. For the performance tasks, the scoring guides and the writing rubrics are also widely available. I put in links to both of those. And again, I would strongly recommend, like, if we have these scoring guides and these writing rubrics where our students are being assessed on SBAC, why would we not be using those in our own classrooms when we're doing student work? So how we are scoring, we can link it right to this, and looking at those scoring guides and those writing rubrics, again, to reflect on your own assessment and how that's working. Wendy says she tried the pre-test with students. It took a long time and you couldn't find the results. Probably you were in the interim comprehensive assessment, which is like that kind of more full-length practice test. They do take a long time. Like I said, those are the ones I don't recommend. I think always the interim assessment blocks or the focused interim blocks, there's no more than 15 questions. So it really shouldn't take students, 2 minutes a question. For literature, some of them might be a little bit longer just because they have to read the passage or passages and then answer the questions. But they're short, quick, and the focused interim should be really short and quick. Yeah, Linda, go ahead.
I really like the data. I like data, and I like setting kids up so they, understand proficiencies. So I think step one before even taking the test is just what you were saying, that we want to be clear about what the proficiencies are, because I think a given is that students really want to learn and they want to meet the challenges. That's what I've found to be true with kids. And so our challenge is to be clear about what the proficiencies are. And then after they take an assessment, they want to know how they did, like Maureen was saying. So it'd be good to follow it up with, sharing. So I really
Absolutely.
want to work more with proficiencies, help kids understand why they're taking this. Then they have a buy-in, hopefully, for doing well on these tests. Because when they're little kids, they'll do whatever you ask them to do, I swear. But then as they get older, they're thinking like, what's the purpose of this? So if we could make it personal, then I think they'll buy in and do their best.
Absolutely.
And
And being
using
able to,
interims will help.
absolutely, because you can again look right down at the individual student, individual item, and you can go through it with them. You can share it with them. It's their learning and their performance. So it's fabulous. I'm going to go back one more time. So Wendy, just on this slide that I'm presenting now, how do we access and use data from the interims? That reporting system quick guide and the reporting system user guide, those will literally walk you through exactly how you access the data and what you click to run each of the reports. So when you have a chance during some of this PD time or during some of our upcoming in-service or summertime, I would recommend that you look through those, because they'll literally walk you through click by click how you access the data and what the reports are showing you. And like I said, I'll revisit that in the fall. I put together some more resources here just around this topic to play with. There's the Smarter Balance website. There's resources for educators website. This back to school assessment playbook, 2020 back to school assessment playbook, is awesome. It gives you, again, a really nice view of the overview of like how this fits into your overall assessment system, how interims can be used. If you're trying to communicate about the interims with somebody else in your building, I would highly recommend that back to school assessment playbook as a resource. There's practice tests, sample questions, blueprints, the program portal, all those pieces. So I'm going to skip this section for just one piece. On the last two slides of this deck, I put in some suggested activities. So if you're looking to enhance your practice in this area, you want to dig a little bit deeper and become more proficient yourself in looking at interims and how they could be used in your classroom, here's just some suggested activities for how you might go ahead and do that. So looking at the item portal, blueprints, looking at the overview, thinking about what will be relevant for your class next year, pacing it out perhaps over the year, looking at that reporting system user guide to see the data that you'll have available, how to access it, looking at those performance task scoring guides and writing rubrics and looking at how they compare with your current assessments of writing and performance tasks, playing around with the resources. And there's a second slide of that too. With, again, a lot of links, exploring Webb's depth of knowledge resources to look at your current assessment design and what level of knowledge you're asking students to apply in each of your assessments. Once you've administered an IAB, breaking it down, looking at the item analysis and also how it compares to the content of your classroom assessments, looking at those summative blueprints and analyzing how it compares to your curriculum over the course of the year, developing your own proficiency scales based on the scoring guides and writing rubrics for your age group, for writing and performance tasks, or looking at, again, what's your pacing guide that outlines assessments, including IABs and how they all fit in together. So just some ideas for next steps to deepen your work when you have time. So I'm going to stop there, and we have a good chunk of time for people to ask questions and or just play in the resources while everything is fresh in your mind. So what questions do folks have, or what things would people like to talk a little more about? Do interventionists have access to student data? That's a great question, Jamie, and I think they can. The answer is they can. It just may be how you're set up in the system. So if when you log in, you do not have access to your courses, for other folks who can't see their data, just put in a tech ticket to Greg, and you can copy me right on that tech ticket on the bottom where it says, do you want to send this information to anybody else? And then I can answer questions for him if he has any. But interventionists should be able to access data for everybody in the interim system. There's no reason that they can't. And I think also we're going to be, so Alpine, if you don't know, our Alpine system is sunsetting. The company is not going to support it moving forward. So they've come up with a new product, the same company called EduClimber, which is going to replace Alpine. And we're going to just migrate our data right over to that. And we'll be doing trainings for that in the fall. But that also is like a data warehouse piece. So it will pull our SBAC and our interim data right into that system, and you'll be able to access it through there. And we'll definitely be doing more training in that too. Yes, Linda, absolutely. Like being able to target specific skills with students in summer school. Again, you can use these as a pretest. So you could give an interim in a skill area right up front and then get very clear targeted data on where the kids are right now for those targets. You know, we have that in MAP also. So you can get their end of year benchmark in MAP and look at it. And MAP and SBAC are highly correlated, and there's lots of research that MAP does to make sure that they're lined up with SBAC. But the tests are a little bit different, and they assess slightly different ways. So that, again, that SBAC data is really, that's where your kids are going to be at the end of the year when they take an SBAC assessment. So very helpful to have a pulse on that all the way through. Sarah, if you print them for the kids is a way to help track progress. So no, if the kids are in an SBAC year and they can just access the portal, that's the best way to do it. Because if they take it in the portal, then the data goes into the portal, and it really does give you great visual data graphs, and it's really nice. But there's no way to manually enter those scores other than the performance tasks of the writing samples. You can manually enter scores for those. But for the others, you really want the kids to take them in the portal if you can. And if you have a non-SBAC year, honestly, I don't know how we would do that, but reach out to me if that is the case, if your kids can't get into the SBAC portal, and if they're not rostered, if they're not supposed to take SBAC during the year that they're with you. And maybe I can work with Greg and we can try and figure out a way to get them into the system. Yeah. Great questions. Under the reporting page, I'm seeing only the summative scores for 7th grade, nothing from the interim that we took or anything from the 8th grade at all. So Wendy, can you share your screen? We'll try and walk through it. Nope. No, it's fine. Formal presentation is done. Play, and we're happy to use this time because you still have a little time left. So like use it. It's so hard when we go to these workshops and we're like, oh, that's so cool. I have to look at it someday when I have time. And then like there is no someday when we have time. So now is the someday when you have time, and go for it. And then when Wendy gets there, we'll take a look at her reporting screen and try and walk her through that. And if anybody else, just pop in if you've got questions or other things that you want to ask or looking for. Uh-oh.
Also, since we're recording, if there is any student information, we'll just
yes.
that piece out somehow. We'll throw it in WeVideo and edit it.
Or we can just
Or I can stop recording.
Yeah.
Stop
recording.
recording.
Why don't we do that, and then we can take a look at what we need to do. Thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.